Gentlemen and lady, welcome to yet another episode of the BMX show. It's good to be here. So today, basically, we're joined by a well-decorated person. She dances, she sings, she's a poet, she's an author. I mean, what is it that she can't do?
True Renaissance lady.
So she's multifaceted, and it's good. It's an honor to actually have her here. Help me welcome, gentlemen, Grace.
Welcome, Grace.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Please grace us with your
Thank you,
presence.
thank you.
Grace, it's an honor to host you today. We've been trying, and we've recently had our success, and we're not gonna waste no more time.
Yeah.
I'm sure people are actually itching to hear from you. So Grace, tell us about you. And you've got some presents for us here as well. So why don't you just maybe put it on the screen for people to actually see?
Oh, my little gifts.
Of course.
So these are my. Before I even introduce myself, I'm already like, hi, these are my books for sale. But these are my books. I have 3 books out currently. We'll talk a little bit more about this maybe
Sure.
later. But these are the little gifts that I brought just to talk about today.
I like the
Yeah.
cover.
You have to plug yourself. You need to give props and tap yourself on the back and let people know there's things happening. Exactly.
3 books, guys.
Yeah.
3.
So one thing I actually left out is your profession.
Yes.
So you also teach, which is very, very fascinating as well, because it seems very difficult to understand from outside looking in how you actually juggle all these things.
Yeah,
that's true.
I also don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. But yeah, I wear many hats. I like to put it that way. But if I could summarize, I'm a performance artist. And even my sort of profession as a teacher, I'm teaching performance. So I don't like to call it's my profession. I feel like it's just like my life.
It's your passion, basically.
Yeah, and I get to live that out and pass it on to others. So that's what makes it fulfilling, I guess, for me. But yeah, that's what I do.
That's an interesting take. And we also have here the usual suspects. They've hardly said a word. So, gentlemen, it's good to have you here. I'm sure we have a lot of questions for Grace, but welcome as well.
Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Welcome to you as well. It's good to be back, guys. By the way, we're shooting at a new location today. I don't know
Saint Tropez,
where is this located again?
Jackal Creek Corner. That's where we're at. North side.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, Grace, performance art, what does it entail actually? Like, are you a dance teacher, drama, acting? Because I need some lessons, and I know Brian also needs some tips.
Well, let me define performance artist
Please.
first. So
Yes,
performance
please.
artist is someone who combines all forms of art. So you have like a performer, and then you have performance, right? So performance art combines from visual arts to dance to theater to everything. So that's why I say I'm a performance artist, because I incorporate a lot of elements from my poetry to my dancing to my singing to my music and all of that. So that's basically the big difference. And so I do everything.
Yeah.
I just don't play an instrument. That's the one thing I cannot do. I used to
this
play
moment.
the piano, but then I
Okay.
stopped.
Oh,
So at some point, if I maybe continued, I'd have been the perfect all-rounder. But so right now, I'm like a poet, as you mentioned. I'm a poet, I'm a writer, I'm a dancer, I sing, I'm an actress, teacher as well. Yeah.
and how does a lesson in like your maybe the average daily lesson, would it combine all those the facets, or do you have them like separated, whereby you have like your visual arts in the one day
Yeah.
and your
I mean, it depends what you're looking for. But if I can describe a typical day in my class, so I would teach drama separately, and then I teach dance separate, and then I teach visual arts separate. But somehow I find ways to incorporate. I do feel like they all speak to each other.
Definitely.
You can't, I mean,
Have the
even
one
with
without the
acting,
other.
there's the body that's involved.
Yeah.
So like that's movement, that's
Yeah.
dance. So I like to sort of, even if I teach drama, include the element of movement and with my learners. So it's not so much like, okay, I'm gonna teach you how to dance and then like show you moves and that's it. I really go to like the core of things to make you understand how the body moves, why the body moves, because that's where you really learn. It's not just doing 1, 2, 3, 4 and then cool, I got the movement, but like teaching what's the concept of body memory. For instance, if you're doing dance, it's like your body actually remembers things. The body has a mind of its own.
So reflexes, like.
Yes, so your lesson with me is not just, you know, slapstick and then we move on. So depending on what you want to learn and like how good you want to get
at a foundation level first.
So it's not like, I mean, I teach dance class as well, like every other weekend, but that's just like I'm teaching you a set choreography. Then you learn the dance and you move on with life. But if you want a more intense, long-term lesson, like I really go into like the depth of theory. I don't want to say theory because that's boring and no one really likes theory, but theory is important in terms of I take the theory and I make it practical so that it makes sense like in your body. It makes sense when you're performing as well.
And how long would it take, like, for that whole...
I don't think...
Or just sit in the foundation.
The foundations. I don't think you ever stop learning in terms of performance, because I feel like you never get to a point where you're like, I'm perfect now. I've learned everything and like I'm great. I feel like there's always room to improve. But I think the foundation really takes as long as you want to. I can't be like, it'll take 6 months and that's it. I think it's how much you're in, I don't want to use the word invested, but how interested you are in wanting to learn. And I think that's my concept on anything. It only takes you as long to learn something as long as you want to learn it. So like if you're not interested in it, it obviously takes longer to grasp the concept. I mean, with any subject, like if you don't like maths, you're not going to spend time with it. You're not going to really take it in. But if you intend to like, I want to learn this thing, I want to do it, it actually, you pick it up faster. That's my opinion as a teacher.
It is actually a true reflection. So Grace, I think everyone mentioned interesting things here. I picked up foundation. So if I look at how you've described performance art, is that correct?
Yes.
It's an embodiment of everything art. So you're so deep into this, right? Like an Atlantic Ocean or something.
The Mariana Trench.
So like, when did this love for art develop in your life?
You can take me back now. So brief history, I'm a PK, I'm a pastor's kid, which like shocks everyone when I say that. So I grew up in the church, and my love for dance, I always say my first love is actually dance. My second love is poetry, but I don't say it out loud because then they're gonna hate each other. But my first love was dance when I started dancing in church at the age of 8. And I sort of just, the spiritual dancing, the old school church, So that's where, that's okay. We need to talk. That's some church history over here. That laugh worries me. Like no.
He needs a lot of lessons. Drop in his whip.
It looks like he's panicking over there. So that's where it started, and then my love for poetry or writing came like 13 when I made the transition from homeschool into like public school for the first time, which was a very like traumatizing phase, I think, for me, coming from just my brother and I in school, and then all of these people and kids, and like I don't know how to say hi or talk to anyone. So I used to just sit and write, and I think I always loved English. I loved like language. I loved what words could do. I think I loved reading novels. Like I used to finish like a whole novel in like a week. So my love for words was natural. So when I started writing, I think that just developed, and I just kept writing. And I only performed my poetry much later in life, like probably only 5 years ago for the first time. Like I got on stage and performed it, and then my love for performance, specifically with poetry, grew from that. So yeah, I started at a very young age. I think I always knew that it was something I loved and that I was passionate about and that I had to do it. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a profound story, actually. So obviously, we made mention of all these other things that you're doing, right? Um, I'm very curious. How do you really like organize your life in such a manner where you are able to do all these other things? Because, I mean, like certain things are very exhausting.
Yeah.
Like you could spend time doing your job, and by the time you knock off, you're already exhausted, and mentally you just need to free yourself up a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
But you're able to do all these other
Yeah.
things, which is very fun actually and very commendable.
Thank you.
So maybe like talk us through that whole process.
I consider myself lucky enough to be doing something I love. And I think, as you were saying that, I was like trying to figure out how is it that I'm not tired when I do all of these things. And I think it's because I'm doing something I love. I don't feel like it's work. And so
Yeah.
even if I'm tired, and not to say I don't come from a long day of teaching teenage kids that I'm not tired, but it's I was doing something I love, and I still feel like there's room to do the other things that I love, because that doesn't feel like work. So I do definitely though take time out some, because you need it. I think even it's, and that's the what's the dangerous part of doing what you love. You do it so much you forget that you actually still need to rest. You're still human.
Yeah.
So I try to prioritize time for that as well, juggling, because I'm also like studying full time, so which is another thing that I'm doing. I forgot to throw that in there.
Is there any other
wo-
surprises?
Working on like my third degree now. I don't know why I keep studying. I also love learning, so I think that is where my love for teaching comes. So I'm juggling that. I'm juggling like 2 jobs. I'm juggling like hustles on the side.
Yeah,
So. But
that's-
it's just, it comes from the passion. I think that's what keeps me going.
No, I
Yeah.
implore that. It's actually great. Here's the thing that I actually wanted to ask you, right? So with art, just like you said, you love it and stuff, right? So when it becomes an obligation, now you've got people that are interested to work with you, or brands that are truly
see.
invested in you, and they expect you to sort of like perform every week, and your body is actually at that point where it's like, I need to rest,
Yeah.
but then you have to fulfill those obligations. Like, has it ever gotten to that point with you, or what would you do if it actually got to that point?
I think now in my like later years, I have learned to say no, which is very important. But it's also about picking your battles. I think also as artists, because being an artist is so difficult,
Yes.
especially in this country, we're like we're ready to jump. Like, you know, if something comes, we need to do it. But I think we forget, like what I was saying, like we forget that we need a breather as well. So, but it's also picking your battles. Sometimes, yo man, if you need to hustle, you must burn yourself out because you need it at that moment. But then also prioritizing time afterwards.
Yeah.
So right now, in the last couple of years, I don't think I've put myself in that position, unless it was for my actual job, like my teaching, like 9 to 5, and getting to a point where like we have to go, like you're tired, but yo, it's Monday, it's work, like, you know, let's do it. So, but also understanding your boundaries and when to say, you know what, this is a bit too much. It's not worth the money. It's not worth the time I'm putting in, because my mental health and my state is still
Yeah.
important. So yeah, that's where I'm still learning that, because I'm still an artist also, and I'm still like, it's a good
Developing,
opportunity.
yeah.
You have to sort of, you know, weigh that out. Yeah.
The significance of that statement is actually we've heard a lot of other artists out there in the world actually saying that I was so exhausted and I needed to take some time off, and they were doing the very thing that they truly loved with all their hearts, but then it kind of like turned into their worst nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's no longer now done out of sheer passion and love. It's now as an obligation, or
Yeah.
I have to honor something. And I'm actually glad that it hasn't gotten to that point, and you sort of like have a plan in place.
Yeah.
Because it's important that we really discuss these things. Because I mean, I myself, like I said to you, that in my profession, there's times where I feel like, you know what, I just need to soak up everything, you know.
Yeah.
And
Just pause, yeah.
and just pause, and that's very important because it keeps you motivated as well, and it keeps you going.
Yeah.
You know, so I did actually like the fact that you have some plan in place for that, and yeah.
And then also on that, which you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
when what Brian actually just spoke about, it just dawned upon me that important part about mental health. Again, we've spoken about it before. We actually
Yeah.
constantly speak about it, and unfortunately we find ourselves, and a lot of people find themselves in that situation whereby things become too much to actually cope with, even though like you're getting paid, you have
Yeah.
everything that
Yeah.
you kind of wanted, but it's just too much to deal
Yeah.
with. And
Yes.
I mean, there's so many examples of people that, I mean, the Avicii's gone, Heath Ledger, the list goes on and on
Yeah.
and on. Very creative people, you know, and it's
Especially
actually sad.
creatives, yeah.
So with that in mind, it's always a theory of mine, which I'm not shooting anybody here, but I just wanted to know,
Yeah.
what's your opinion about like these brilliant actors and actresses that are able to switch personas and roles and characters? Like, do you think that somewhere along the line there's maybe a connection that's not either there, or that's it's maybe overlapping somewhere, whereby there's a little bit of instability? Because I mean, for you to be able to portray a role
Yeah.
in such a way that it's like it's completely believable,
Yeah.
you know, how do you pull that off and be sane?
And also, just to add to his point
Yeah.
as well, like don't like what happens when you stay
Yeah,
in
in that
those
role.
characters.
In
Yeah,
that, that's I was gonna make a
exactly.
comment on that
and
now.
you never really
yeah.
walk away from them. They become an inherent part of you now.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm laughing because I've thought about this, especially like when you think of Heath Ledger and like
Yeah,
that type of roles that they're playing.
yeah.
And
that was sad,
and even
though.
the last Joker that came out, like I was like,
Yeah.
you are not normal after after playing this character. But I think, especially as artists, because we are people who we either give 100% or we don't give. Like we're not gonna half like, you know,
Yeah.
anything. If you ask us for something, we wanna pour that out. And I think the danger specifically with acting is not having, okay, it's two things. This is my assumption based on like my experience. Two things is not having a method put in place to de-roll, which is something I find very important even when I teach my acting, or if I have a session with kids where we had to take on other characters, I always de-roll them. Like even if they find afterwards, like you take a second, you breathe, you come back into your body because you just took on
A different
someone's persona or
Yeah.
someone's feelings.
Yeah.
It's important for you to just ground yourself and be like, okay, the session is done, we're moving on. But for actors like that who do it consistently, like they're on set every day, they like have to channel this, like they get into this method acting zone where you have to become, if you're going to be that good, you
Exactly.
need to literally get into the mind
Yeah.
of that. And I think the repetition of it and being so passionate about the craft,
Yes.
you get lost in it. And it's painful because it's like I don't think there's a clean cut way of saying he could have done different, he could have like not fallen into that, because I mean, especially in that industry, when you're that good and people know you're that good, you also like, I need to do this.
You need to
I need to
deliver.
play this
Yeah.
role fully. And when you go home though, no one checks in on you.
Yeah, that's
You know,
Yeah.
no one is going, hey,
Check-in
so like
sessions,
today's
guys.
scene was
Yeah.
hectic. Like, are you okay? And I think
Yeah.
that's what's missing in the industry as well, which is why I'm like a big thing of like mental health and checking in with yourself and understanding where you stand, because not everyone does that for you. No one
That's true.
after something has happened checks in and says, yo, like, that was hectic. Are you okay? It was
Yeah.
quite an emotional scene. You look like you took on a lot. And I mean, I've been in positions like that where I've witnessed on stage as well, like someone really getting into character, walking backstage, and they're still in the character.
Wow.
And you sort of
Must
have
be
to,
scary.
and like if there's, for instance, like a crying scene, an emotional scene,
Yeah.
walk off the stage and they're still crying, like
Yeah.
hectically, because you've sort of taken on that role. And I think as creatives, we are empaths as well.
Okay.
We don't just, we can really take a emotion or a feeling and be like, if I was this person, this is how I would feel. So I don't have a direct answer for you, but
no,
I think it could be a combination of those things. It could be one, or it could be something else as well. But it is a tough thing as creatives and performers, especially I think in the acting industry and that world, that no one, especially the best actors and like the greatest actors who just, you see them falling because of mental health.
Because with Heath Ledger on the check-ins, I think he actually locked himself. I'm not 100% sure. He locked himself in his apartment for like the entire duration of, well, actually prior to the shooting and then during that phase, so that he can really embody this character. So that made it even worse because now you don't have that breakaway, like you say.
Exactly.
That,
they
check
really
out
immerse into that.
Exactly. So now you're just loving this guy. Apparently, even did his own makeup. They had a makeup artist, but he's like, now if he was really the Joker would have done his own makeup, and it would have.
That's like truly embodying. But you see the brilliant performance that came out of it. But then I come back to my first point of, you need to pick your battles. Like, what are you willing to also go to that length? And maybe you don't understand how hectic it's going to be at the end. But again, if you are aware firstly of your mental state and how this could affect you if you took this on, I think it's coming with that. It comes with that self-awareness as an artist or a performer, creative, of being like, okay, I know who I am. I understand this might be too much for me. Maybe I shouldn't lock myself for like 30 days straight. Maybe I should just have moments where I check out. But again, it's like the pressure of that like industry is also like super hectic. And I mean, he gave the best performance of his life, but no one was going, is he okay though? Because
that's the thing.
Because it's intense.
I think there's a level of pragmatism that's required to actually be able to tap in and out, because I think of football players, for instance, like playing in crowds where people are literally like abusing them, you know, and how they just switch off and just focus on what they're doing,
on what's happening,
and it's not like they oblivious to what's happening. They know, then they actually experiencing it, but they have moments where they just switch off and say, I'll deal with this later, you know, and then they go back to being humans again, and then they get to address all these things that the abuse that I actually suffered today was not cool. And you think, wow, but you were so good there, you didn't seem disturbed. And it is what it is,
keeping that composure in tough times. I remember actually drifting off, but since you mentioned soccer, I just remember the 2006 World Cup final with Italy and Zidane. Well, Italy and France, obviously, and Zidane took the penalty at like, what was it, 6 minutes into the game or something like that. And at the time that he got to the box, the commentators were like, just look at him. It's as if there's ice running through his veins. And you could imagine that at that moment, it's the biggest, stage in football. So the pressure, the captain taking the and this was now the decider of whether they would lead at that moment or not. And the whole country, not only the team, the entire country is on his shoulders at this moment. And calm, composed, he just chips it in. It takes a really strong mind to be able to do that.
And it was a bit,
and if you think about it, that's actually a performance.
Exactly. Exactly.
Having to take on that, like, just switch off and be like, this is what I need to do now. You have to sort of do that. And like you're saying, it comes with sort of being pragmatic and understanding what your role is and what you need to do, and then being able to like leave and be like, okay, I'm leaving this there, and this now I'm stepping into this.